Right now on Upfront.
The governor's veto threat.
We're already starting to saber rattling.
Negotiations intensifying this weekend. Local officials testifying for hours on the proposed shared revenue bill.
Should the governor veto it?
Look, I think that we're in a stage right now where there's a lot of back and forth.
All this as Republicans strip more than 500 provisions from the governor's budget.
More spending, more welfare, smoke more weed. Yeah, our approaches are going to be different.
Another wild week ahead. Our guest this Sunday, two lawmakers at the center of it all. Democratic State Senator LaTonya Johnson, Republican State Representative Tony Kurtz.
Then push for the arts.
We're going to have our lunch eaten by our neighboring states because they're putting more effort behind this.
A new coalition asking state lawmakers to finally fund a program they created more than 2 decades ago. With budget hopes dwindling, what's next?
And social media crackdown. A Green Bay state lawmaker proposing Wisconsin take on the big social media companies head on.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. More drama expected to play out this week at the Capitol.
Just as that 5.5-hour-long hearing on the shared revenue bill kicked off, Governor Tony Evers announced he would veto the legislation if changes aren't made. This just 2 days after Republicans on the Budget Committee stripped more than 500 provisions from the governor's budget proposal.
Two lawmakers at the center of it all are here. Republican State Representative Tony Kurtz, who helped write the shared revenue bill, and Democratic State Senator LaTonya Johnson, both members of the Joint Finance Committee.
We begin with Senator Johnson. Senator Johnson, good to see you like always.
Thank you for having me.
So the governor says he will veto this bill if it would pass as is. Should he?
Yes, he should. This bill is not ready, especially for the city of Milwaukee. There are so many just poison pills in this bill relating to the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County.
Speaker Voss told me here last week the referendum provision is likely not going to be changed. Do you anticipate changes and that could actually be removed?
That has to be changed. And the reason is that without the increased sales tax, Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee will face insolvency January 1st, 2025. There's no exceptions. And it's too risky to put that to referendum. A, because we can't guarantee that it'll pass, but two, the money will come too late.
That is just one of the provisions in this bill. Are there any that you think that the governor should insist on removing, or is there room for negotiation on any of them?
So, first of all, the provisions that the governor mentioned yesterday, I think were right on the mark. Not dissolving the authority for the Fire and Police Commission. If the bill is approved as the way it's written, we give all of that authority back to the police chiefs and the fire chiefs, and there's no accountability, and we just can't have that. The 2/3 majority vote in order for new spending resolutions, we can't afford to have that either. It basically presents itself as almost putting our local governments in a stalemate. And the other thing that he referenced was local referendums. We use those referendums to gauge the issues that are in the community and what our community members think about those issues. That's one of the ways that we have to gauge their opinion and to actually get those statistics. And so not being able to do that would hurt local communities.
This weekend, it seems like we're at a little game of political chicken at this point. I'm curious, at what point does this threat of a veto put this entire legislation at risk?
The threat of the veto, I think, is to prevent this legislation from setting precedents. Some of the things that Milwaukee is being asked to do, the other counties are not. And I think that makes Milwaukee more vulnerable. It puts us in a position where it puts us further away from becoming whole.
How do you see this playing out with voters? In Milwaukee, do you see voters approving a referendum for these issues?
I do not. First of all, I want to say that nobody wants to raise taxes, especially during a time when inflation is so high. What makes me so fearful that the referendum won't pass is I don't think that the vast majority of people living in this city or in this county understand exactly how dire this is, which is insolvency if this does not pass. and we can't risk it. So the only other way to make sure that it passes is to make sure that the local leadership takes the vote for that.
Let's talk about the state budget quickly. Republicans stripping 545 items from the governor's proposal this past week. You expressed serious concerns about that. Democrats have been critical of Republicans of throwing what they see as policy in the shared revenue bill. Isn't this what the governor did in the budget bill, is some policy items and a major increase in spending?
So the governor did put some policy items in the budget, and those items would have came out rightfully so. But the spending increases that the governor put in the budget were strictly based on what constituents said that they wanted. This budget was created from Governor Evers going across the state, talking to people and finding out what their issues and needs were.
Senator Johnson, always great to have your insight and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Tony Kurtz, one of the authors of the shared revenue bill and a member of the budget committee, joins us now from his home district in Juneau County. Representative, really good to see you.
Well, thanks for having me, Matt, and good morning to everybody.
Let's dive into this, a more than 5-hour public hearing on the shared revenue bill. At this point, from the conversations you're having, is there any scenario where the referendum requirement for Milwaukee will be removed?
Well, there's still a lot of moving pieces moving forward, and I would imagine, as Assembly Republicans, our position is, and always has been, if people want to raise their own taxes, you need to vote on it by referendum. But obviously, we still have a lot of information to put together, and we'll just see how the rest of the week and next couple weeks play out.
I've heard there's potentially some openness in the Senate among some Senate Republicans to go in that direction. Is there the same conversations happening among Assembly Republicans?
Assembly Republicans are pretty set on the referendum. I mean, it's going to take a major commitment from the governor to get us to change our mind.
And take me inside the negotiations this weekend going into next week. What is happening given the governor's position coming out with the threat of a veto, and what are Republicans willing to negotiate on this point?
Well, it was a little disappointing, to be very honest. I mean, the speaker and the majority leader probably about a little over a week ago had a good meeting with the governor. This past Wednesday, our staff, the speaker staff, the majority leader staff met with the governor's staff and once again had another good, productive meeting. And so obviously the bill, he threatened to veto the bill as written. I think Senator Filskowski and I were pretty clear in the committee hearing that the bill as written will be changing. There'll be amendments. And so I feel very comfortable moving forward. When we put a bill on the governor's desk, he's going to be it's going to be a lot like the budget. It's going to be some things he's not going to be crazy about, things that we're not going to be crazy about. But at the end of the day, this is too important of a piece of legislation not to get done, in my humble opinion. So we're still moving forward. I think there's going to be still negotiations, as there should be, healthy negotiations, and I feel good in the position that we're in right now.
The speaker told me on Friday there was a long list, or there was a list at least that the administration gave of provisions they want to see removed from that Wednesday meeting. Are there active conversations on negotiating over those specific items that the governor wants out?
Yeah, we're looking at those. I mean, we had a good meeting with the Senate the other day concerning those items. But yeah, I mean, there's always going to be wiggle room. I think there's wiggle room and there needs to be wiggle room, let's be honest. But no, those are things we are looking at right now.
And broadly speaking, on the shared revenue formula, a lot of opinions, as you sure know, some of those voiced during the public hearing, even from some fellow Republicans. What do you say to the argument that, hey, this is a good step, but this doesn't not even come close to solving the long-term problem?
No, I understand that. But, Matt, what is amazing is we have known for decades that this has been a problem. We are on the cusp of truly doing something special. The other thing that is getting lost in the conversation is the current shared revenue and then the new supplemental shared revenue will be tied to the growth of the state sales tax. Now, communities can plan on that increase based on inflationary pressures, based on the growth of the state, whereas in the past, as you and I both know, that formula has been frozen. And so I think that's something that I would hope more municipalities would keep that in mind.
A busy week, and definitely a busy week ahead. State Representative Tony Kurtz, one of the authors of the Shared Revenue Bill, member of Joint Finance. Hey, we really appreciate your time.
Nope, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Up next, a push for the arts. A broad coalition pushing lawmakers to fund a program they created more than 20 years ago. We're going to take a look at the statewide impact next.